showtime!
Another patch and another abyss, and finally, we can say good riddance to the Maguu Kenki. He may not be a terrible fight, but I hate his face. Sometimes all three of his faces. First up, the Blessing. While this blessing may be decently strong on paper, most people aren't exactly investing in electro units specifically for electro charge. So if you are one of those people, just don't fall into the trap that a lot of people do with Spiral Bliss, thinking that they have to play a character specifically for the blessing. If you have a character like Ganyu, who is a lot stronger than any of your other electro options, then this blessing is not going to make a unit as strong as your Ganyu. However, if you already have a well-built Raiden, she's going to benefit from this greatly, especially if you like to use her in the Raiden national team. Of course, if you have Yaimiko and you are looking to use her in the Abyss, then go for it. She will do great here. It'll just all depend on your account and who you have access to and who you have built. I think sometimes people might look at the Abyss Blessing and be like, I have to do this. This is a command. No, you can ignore it. More often than not, I find it's better to ignore it. If it happens to work out for you, good. But if it doesn't, don't do it. However, if you're just aching to use that new Yaimiko you just got, or you want to use some other electro unit because it's just one of your main DPS, then you're going to want to put your electro units on the first half of both floor 11 and floor 12. And you won't be dealing with enemies that are resistant or just outright immune to electro like you would if you put them on the second half. You can do whatever you want, but one is literally the path of least resistance. If you're a masochist and you like self-torture, who am I to judge? But enough about the blessing. Floor 11 this time is a little bit of a kitchen sink. A very messy kitchen sink that, like, fucking Gordon Ramsay would just be horrified from on Kitchen Nightmares. Like, they just decided to throw everything in here. Like, there's Abyss Selectors, Abyss Mages, Whopper Flowers, Vishaps, Slimes, Specters of varying elements, dogs, more Abyss Heralds, and on some floors they spawn back and forth on opposite sides of the room. The second half lineup of this floor is very, 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 very unfriendly to electro units. If you want to try to bring them, go for it. Again, I'm not going to judge you for your masochism. But if you want to experience pain that bad, why aren't you just wishing instead? If success is more your thing, however, a freeze team will go a lot further. Not only will it counter a lot of the mobile enemies, but it will also destroy the Lecter combo at the very end. As for the first half of these chambers, nothing really to worry about. You're going to deal with some Hydra Shields in the beginning, but in the end, you're going to deal with some Electro Puppies, which I think at this point, most of us are used to dealing with. If you're not overly familiar with their mechanics, we have Geo Puppies and we have Electro Puppies, and if you hit them with their respective elements, they will enrage and start going into like a Berserk state where they will attack faster, I think, I'm pretty sure, or just more damage. Either way, I don't care, because when you do that, they also take more damage from those elements. So unlike most regular enemies, you are actually incentivized to fight them with their own elements. Whether or not you actually wish to use the Enrage mechanic to deal more damage is entirely up to you. However, just like with the Abyssal Blessing, you may not even have an elemental DPS built that matches these puppies, especially with Geo, where a lot of people don't even have a Geo main DPS. If you have stronger units, just use them, because they're going to do better anyway. With that said, we're moving on to floor 12. Chamber 1 could be an annoying one for a lot of people. We of course have more Electro Puppies, but making their debut in the Abyss, we finally have the Bathismal Vishaps. Finally may not be something a lot of people say, but I for one am excited to see new enemies in here. If the Vishaps are giving you trouble, it might be for one of two reasons. You might not be controlling your knockback well enough, and you may actually be splitting them apart, thus cutting your damage basically in half, or you're actually having energy issues because you're getting hit by their Cleansing Shower attack, which is an attack that the big ones will use, which will fire a water ball at you, which generally you wouldn't associate water with draining your energy, but that is a mechanic that all these primordial Vishaps have. As for the knockback, all you can do is really control your positioning. One of the most important things you can do is just to be careful to not use bursts like Xingqiu's burst in the middle of them, because it makes them fly back so dramatically that it's like they deported themselves all the way back to Enkanomiya. Other than that, there's not really anything you can do to take these things down any easier. There's nothing really tricky about them. They're really just DPS races, just like regular Vishaps, just with some spice. Personally, I think the main challenge of these things, and just like regular Vishaps again, is that they, for whatever reason, have the same like knockback resistance as a frickin' Hilichurl. Everything you do makes these things fly back in a dramatic like leap backwards. It's ridiculous. It makes them pretty annoying to fight, but honestly, just like most things, you can just fight them with a freeze team if you want, and then problem solved. You just get them together once and then kill them. Chamber 2. Starting off with my favorite thing to fight in this entire game, Ruin Graders, 2 of them at a time. And they start pretty far away, so what you should do immediately is run back as far away as possible. You may have to run up to them first a little bit, to get them to start their charge, but once they do, you're good. Since it's the first half, it's not really a big deal if you have to retry a couple times to get the AI to do what you want it to do. Now that they're about as close together as Nina and Alexander, they can be taken out incredibly easily with basically any AoE comp in the game. If you got a C2 beta on top of that, she's going to shred these assholes apart so quickly because this is basically the perfect scenario. You could not engineer a better situation than this unless something had absurdly low electro resistance. But now that you've killed the 2 Ruin Graders in hopefully less than 30 seconds, because they drop like sacks of bricks, you can move on to what might be the greatest challenge for most players in this run of the Abyss, the Golden Wolf Lord, the spiciest of all the puppies. I think it's safe to say that most people aren't going to have a whole lot of, if any, experience fighting this thing. So let's just go over what's basically like the Golden Wolf Lord starter kit. It's a Geo character, just one. Really all you need. The main mechanic you're going to be watching out for here is his shield phase. Shortly after the fight begins, after you've taken a little bit of the Wolf Lord's health away, he will be sending 3 Wolf Idols around the arena. This is where the Geo character comes in. Any of them will suffice for this, but there are ones that are better than others, the best being Goro and Ningguang, seeing that they are not beholden to any cooldowns to actually get this phase over with as fast as possible. Characters such as Ito and Noelle don't do really well on this phase because you have to use their bursts to get reliable Geo, but you shouldn't be running them alone without Goro anyway. Anyone who uses those characters as their main DPS should have a Goro unless you got terribly unlucky, but at the very least you will have other Geo characters in your party as a battery. For everyone else though who does not run a Geo main DPS party, which is most people, you have quite a few options, but a lot of them are going to be a detriment to your team outside of a few other niche comps. Here's a trap I think a lot of people are going to fall into. A lot of people have Zhongli. A lot of people love Zhongli, so you're going to want to bring him, and that's totally fine. You should. He is a good option for this fight. Just don't use his held skill, because that is a very long cooldown, and you want to use the tap version. However, here comes a caveat. Here's where I see a lot of people running into an issue. The Golden Wolf Lord, as many people might know or come to find out, has corrosion just like all the Rift Hounds do. And it is of my personal opinion that I think people are a little bit too scared of corrosion. They see any amount of health decreasing on their party as a whole, and they freak out and overreact. And it's in this overreaction where I see a lot of people also on top of Zhongli possibly bringing a healer, which is fine. It can be fine if it naturally fits into your party. Obviously, that healer could be Bennett, but if you're putting Zhongli and Bennett on the other team, that might leave your other team lacking, again, depending on what team comps you have available. But if you're putting a character like Barbara or Chi-Chi or Sayu or some other healer that doesn't really serve much of another purpose in here just to fight corrosion, you are doing yourself a great disservice, and you're going to be making the Abyss a lot harder for yourself than it should be. The goal here is to obviously include a Geo character to deal with the shield phase, but not overall impact the DPS of your team so much that you just kill them in like 5 minutes. There are lots of teams that can just do this anyway without having to sacrifice anything. Anyone that has Albedo can use a Hu Tao comp that uses Albedo. They can use a Xiao comp, which will actually work great for the next boss on the next floor. Obviously, any mono GPS, fuck Jesus. I've said GPS in like 4 takes. Obviously, any mono Geo DPS teams will do great on this fight, just as they always do, but that's not accessible to a lot of people. Most people hate Noelle, and you shouldn't, she's great, and they didn't get Ito, which also, shame on you. As for Chamber 3, as with the last one, we have a very easy first half, which honestly not really much to say about, just some Ruin Sentinels. The other half, however, is the Coral Defenders, and these are a little bit different than they are out in the open world. Due to the fact that they don't have their special arena and they are instead in just a plain abyss, they have a little bit different mechanics and behaviors than they do outside. The main difference being that instead of the critical assist state where the fully depleted one helps the currently alive one out, they instead have a link where if you kill one of them early, it will actually revive. So you have to kill them around the same time. You have a very short window to do this. Luckily, that is not a very difficult thing to do, as these do give you a lot of opportunities to damage both of them simultaneously, instead of having to worry about actually splitting your damage 50-50 between the two. As with everything, this will vary heavily depending on your team comp. Obviously, as you can see in the footage, Ito does very well because he has very large AoE swings. More single target focused characters like Yoimiya or Hu Tao will obviously have a little bit harder of a time than a character like Xiao or Ito, who have very large AoE attacks and have no problem hitting both at the same time, even in a little bit more difficult scenarios. Outside of that, pretty much just don't get hit by their cleansing shower attack because they drain a lot of your energy, and that can be very problematic for some teams, especially for a character like Ito who lives or dies on his burst. Given that the fight is a little tiny bit different than the actual overworld fight, it's a little bit hard to actually practice this adequately. Luckily, there's not a difficult floor to get through to get to this, so you can breeze through the first half and then practice this as much as you have to, and then just hope for the best manipulation of AI or whatever you need to get your 36-star clear. Overall, this Abyss doesn't feel like it has too much nuance to it. It really just feels like DPS checks, but not like in a really annoying way. And most importantly, we got rid of the Maguu Kenki. But these kind of tips alone are not always enough to get you that 36-star clear. You might need some more generic tips, and I have a video I covered a while back where its whole premise is about being as efficient as humanly possible with a lot of your resources that are centered around character building. There are free-to-play accounts out there that are as strong as some whale accounts because they maximize everything because they have to. I would actually love to hear what you guys think about this Abyss. Like, do you like it? Do you like these bosses? Are you happy to have something a bit more complex than the Maguu Kenki? I personally am, and I love the companion enemies that they put along with this. This is one of my favorite floor 12s we've had in quite a while. I wish you the best of luck in clearing this Abyss fully this time and hope you have fun doing it. That is the most important part. It's a game after all. If you have more questions regarding the Abyss or anything really about the game, you can join my Discord. I am usually around to help, and there's lots of other smart people who can also help you if I'm not around. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you in the next one.